So today is Palm Sunday. It is the beginning of Holy Week in Christianity. And it is, of course, the story of the last week of the life of Jesus. And as we all know the story, a lot happened. A lot happened in that last week. And he shared profound, profound spiritual teachings. And of course, it was a very difficult week. So it's kind of a somber reflection in a way. I've been really reflecting on it all week, but I've gone to some very deep places in reflection, and I hope we can touch upon that today. So it said Jesus arrived in Jerusalem, as the story goes, and he rode on a donkey, which was a symbol of peace, versus a horse, which in those days was a symbol of war. And the people welcomed him with palms laid on the ground, and also their coats laid on the ground, and that's how they welcomed revered and honored and great people back in those days. And they called him King of the Jews, but he corrected that and said that his kingdom was the kingdom of heaven. And, studying his teachings, and especially the wisdom teachings, there's something called non-dual Christianity, which is so exciting to me. I'm loving seeing this evolution, really, evolution, which it needs to evolve. The kingdom of heaven is a state of consciousness. It's a state of being, of experiencing direct oneness with all that is. Cynthia Borgalt, I hope I'm saying that right. She is fabulous. I've recently discovered her work. But she's a contemporary Christian mystic. She's an Episcopal priest. And she wrote beautifully on Mary Magdalene. She's got some amazing books. But she wrote about Jesus' message. Here's how she described it. His message was that God is a loving presence that is always near, and that prayer is a simple trust in that presence. I love the simplicity of that. That prayer is a simple trust in that presence. Because think about it, when you start to pray, we had a board meeting. Was that just yesterday or 2 days ago? And we were all chatty, and then when we drop into prayer, it's just, this whole thing shifts, right? And it's like you're opening up to the part of you that trusts that presence is there. Maybe you weren't paying attention to it, but in the next moment you are, and you trust that it's there. It's a simple trust in that presence. And then the spiritual teachings that these spiritual masters, including Jesus, shared with us, they help us bridge the gap. This is from Cynthia. The gap between what we believe and what we can actually live. Do you know what I'm talking about? That gap between what we believe as our highest truth, as our highest aspiration, to live as Jesus, to live as a Christ, as the divine mother. That is our highest aspiration. But what we're actually able to live, right? Bridging that gap is what our spiritual life is, isn't it? It's all about that. So that moment in history when Jesus was bringing this radical message of love, love one another, love your neighbor, love your enemies, love everyone. And this message of the consciousness of God resides in you. There is a kingdom of heaven within. He didn't say without. He didn't say that kingdom of heaven is out there in those priests, so you better go find those priests, right? He said that kingdom of heaven is within you, right? So that message was very threatening because it threatens power. It threatens religious power, and it threatens political power because it's so empowering, right? It's self-empowering. So it was also, I was thinking it was a threat to the power of the ego, because it was and it is a message of surrendering the egoic self. I feel it when we chant. I feel we surrender. We get out of our personal self with all our busyness and all our to-do lists and all the things we want and all the things we like and dislike. We drop it and we give ourselves, don't we? We just kind of let go and give ourselves to God. That's what it is to give yourself to love, and that's what it is to give up a separate self, right? In the many years touring with Alma, I have so many Alma stories I love to share with you all. um, watching her for 20 years, day after day, hug thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Every day, there were some days when I was so lucky I got to do that seva where I got to be right beside her chair and put the kiss and the flower petal in her hand, and then she gave that to each person. And there was so much Shakti in her hand and in her being because she's just love. She's plugged into the direct source, right? She's merged with it. So it was such a high. And while I was sitting beside her chair doing that, I would always have these tears streaming down my face. And I would feel like, oh, I am the Divine Mother. I'm feeling all this love she's feeling, right? But then I'd have some other seva, like I'd be working in the snack shop selling cookies or something. And out there, in that chatter, I would just sometimes get away from that, unconditional love I was feeling. And I'd have days on tour where I was tired, and I'd have days where it was so crowded. I just wanted to go to some quiet beach or mountain lake somewhere and get away from the crowd. And I was grumpy and I had likes and dislikes. And my very personal self was very present. And that unconditional, loving, selfless being was in the back seat, right? And so the ego was driving more. So it was such a teaching to be around a master teacher who just could always hold that space. And to me, the teaching, I was always so humbled by that capacity for love. Every time I was with her, it made me leave wanting to be better, to love more, to give more, to serve more, to do better. And it also really helped me understand Jesus more. Growing up Catholic, I was kind of a recovering Catholic for a while. And I felt like I realized I didn't reject Jesus. I rejected interpretations that didn't resonate with me, right? So I understood Jesus more through Amma. And one of the things that was interesting about this Holy Week story was how Jesus arrives in Jerusalem to shouts of Hosanna. Hosanna means pray, help us. Pray, help us. And yet, within a few days, what did that turn into? What did those shouts turn into? Crucify him, right? That, for me, really frightened me when I was little and I first heard that story. And it's like a metaphor in humanity for the way humans want love and they want healing and they want peace, but then sabotage it. Have you ever seen that happen? Yeah, yeah. It's just part of being human. They do it. Humans do that sometimes. We do that sometimes. So that scared me. But, what scared me was how humans can be changeable and unpredictable, right? And they could be your friend, and then later they're not your friend. They're against you, right? And so that scared me at first. But as I've been with that, and as I've learned to just keep my eyes wide open about human nature and not be afraid of the unconscious parts of human nature, not be afraid of the darkness anymore, right? I wrote a song years ago, embrace it, all that seems dark. Embrace it, all that seems unlovable. Embrace it and be whole again. Greg Braden found that song and he was using it in all his workshops for a while. Yeah, so human beings are capable of incredible goodness. And we also have this shadow side, this egoic identity that has to be brought into the light, that has to be enlightened and purified and transformed. It's okay. We can breathe into it. I've been, as I said, loving the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And part of what she writes about, if you really study it, there's like these 7 chapters, and they talk about how we meet the shadow or the egoic self and transform it. She really writes a lot on that. And she describes the powers of the ego, the supposed powers, as darkness, craving, ignorance, craving for death, enslavement to the physical body, the false peace of the flesh, and the compulsion of rage. And so in that story of, the people shouting Hosanna and then that changing to let's crucify the messenger of love, we're seeing the story of our own inner challenge of changing what is dark to light, right? Of changing what is ignorant to wise, of changing what is resentful to forgiving, right? That prayer, St. Francis says it all, doesn't it? That is a prayer of transformation. That's why I love that prayer. So it's the work of bridging the gap of what we believe as our highest ideal to what we can actually live each moment, right? I'd love to live that selflessness of Alma and that degree of love. And so I practice returning to love. One of my albums is called Return to Love because to me, that's what it is. It's just more and more, how quickly can we return to love when we've lost our center? And the more that we do, the less we're away from love, and that's just kind of this natural journey of waking up, right? But, for me, Jesus, for me, especially in this week, his bravery in the face of that unconsciousness and that frightening aspect of humanity, that mob mentality, that for me is such a great example of holding steady right now in the world right now, right? Are there any frightening things in this world to any of you? Yeah. This world has its imperfection. It has its work to do. We have our work collectively and individually to do. There's plenty to be afraid of. But his message is that love is ultimately the greatest power, and that it is a power even greater than death. Yeah. So Cynthia Borgalt wrote, in the common understanding, Christianity has tended to view the resurrection as Jesus' triumph over physical death. But the Christians in the wisdom tradition, its meaning lies in something far deeper than merely the resurrection of a corpse. Jesus' real purpose in his sacrifice was to wager his own life against his core conviction that love is stronger than death, and that the laying down of self, which is the essence of this love, leads not to death, but to life. That's a mouthful. I highly recommend her writings. Her blogs are amazing. So, from the left brain part of us, from the very rational part of us, we look at this Holy Week and it's bleak. It feels bleak, that this messenger of love was betrayed and killed. But his message is one, that we're talking about right now, right? Here we are. His message is alive. This love that he is, that he was, that he is living. It's right here. We're thinking about it. We're contemplating it. It has not been destroyed. It has not been destroyed. It is greater than physical death or any egoic power, right? Richard Rohr, anybody familiar with his work? He's another wonderful present-day Christian mystic. I love these Christian mystics because I think they're really so paramount in waking up and transforming Christianity. There's so much good there, but we got to extricate the dogma, right? But he put it this way. It's a bit blunt. He has the more yang way of putting it. He wrote of the crucifixion of Jesus that humans would sooner kill God than change themselves. Wow. But he went on to say that your only badness consists in what you do to goodness. Your only badness consists in what you do to goodness, yours, your own, or anybody else's. So I think that's a rich message. That's what I've been contemplating this week is, what do we as humans, we need to ask ourselves, how do we take care of our goodness? How do we take care of our godness? How do we, from a heart of compassion, ask ourselves, are we taking care of the goodness in ourselves and each other? Are we cultivating it? Are we honoring it? Even taking care of our body is a way of taking care of our goodness, our godness. So I remember years ago, I used to give concerts at boarding schools for for troubled teens. It was a boarding school where it was kind of the last stop before they had to go in detention. And I would sing and I would give them workshops. And then I started bringing them to Mount Shasta because I knew that mountain and nature would be great for them. So there was this one retreat where I was giving this to this group of teens, and there was this one girl, Kate, that came, and she was bound and determined from the very beginning to sabotage that experience for herself and for everybody else. And, really from the beginning, I was speaking on meditation, and she would giggle and she would snicker, and during the chanting, she'd roll her eyes, and sometimes during the meditation, she'd be throwing paper balls to the other side of the room and interrupting the participants. So about midday of the first day, I just said, Kate, and I was just really in my heart, and I said, Kate, what is going on? What is going on inside of you? I'm feeling this anger and contempt, but I'm actually feeling this real suffering underneath it, this real hurt. What's going on, Kate? And she was stunned. She was stunned, and she was silent for a bit. And then this tiny little girl voice started speaking, and it was sincere. And she started sharing very humbly, saying, I'm not happy at home. I don't feel loved. I don't feel loved. And I feel incredibly lonely. And I feel I hate myself. I feel so ashamed of who I am. So then she started sobbing. So then I went and I sat beside her and I just put my arms around her, and then she just really, it was a river of tears. And then I looked around, and all the teens, all their eyes were all watery, and they were quietly having this huge release. So this went on for a while, and so I took my mala. She's lying in my arms off my neck that Alma had put on my neck years ago, and I put it around her neck, and I said, this is my most sacred item. Alma gave me this, and it reminds me that the Divine Mother is always with me and always holding me and always loving me, and I am always loved, even when I'm having a hard time loving myself. And she just clutched it like it was the most precious thing she'd ever been given. And after a while, she got really quiet. And so for the rest of the retreat, she was the most incredible student you could ever want at a retreat. She was paying attention. She was meditating earnestly. She was listening to all the teachings. She was singing, chanting beautifully. She had this beautiful voice. And it was just the absolute picture of a rebirth. I mean, she was reborn. She was transformed. And I was just amazed. So she wrote me about a week later this beautiful letter about how she got home and that experience changed her life, and that she never knew she could love herself, and she never knew she could love the broken parts of herself. And years later, I was at Alma's and I sang, and I got done singing, and I got in line for darshan, and there's Kate. There's Kate. She's got that mala on. And she is transformed, and she has been hanging out with Alma for years. And I was just blown away. It was such a confirmation of this work of sharing love, and that includes self-love. I did that work a while back, so I sometimes forget that's still part of certain people's Earth School class, right? And that this healing the seemingly unlovable shadow parts of ourselves, right? And that is just so very important. So I'd love to see Kate. I can't remember her last name, but I hope I see her again. But we grow our faith in love. That grew my faith in love. I had that letter was one of the most precious things until it burned in that campfire with everything else. But it's in my heart. So we grow our courage to face and embrace and work with all of our humanness. It's time. We're mature now. I feel like the folks that are coming here, all of you, you're just, you're at this level of consciousness. It's really mature. I can feel it. It draws these talks out of me. It draws this music out of me. It's just this open container, this heart that you all are. And so part of our work together is we just stop denying our own shadow. It's okay. We stop projecting it. And we just attend to the wounded child parts of ourselves. We can do a lot of work and think we've healed, but then something more comes up, and that's okay. It's like peeling an onion, right? The healing process. So another really powerful teaching of Holy Week is the teaching on forgiveness. When my mom passed, I just felt like, forgiveness is the highest love, because we did this life review. We did it for days, really. It seemed like we did it for a week. And there was just so much forgiveness. It was effortless, but it was so important. And I felt like we forgave everything between each other, but we forgave her mother, her grandmother, just everything. It was all this healing. Jesus is dying and he's forgiving, and he's going through a really horrible, painful death, but he's so immovably awake to love and to his true nature that he's expressing forgiveness. And I don't think it was just for him. I think it was yet another teaching, kind of like Alma. Everything is a teaching. Everything is to teach, to awaken, to forgive, the ignorance in humanity. They don't know. They don't know yet, right? We need a lot of patience. We need a heaping dose of patience, with this process of evolution. It's going slower than I'd like. How about you? Oh, yeah. We make mistakes, and so we just need a lot of understanding. We get lost in the separateness, and people, when they get lost in the darkness, they do dark things. But the light that he was one with, that we are one with, that tells us to forgive and reminds us love is the greatest power. Tell me, I want to hear from you. Tell me why you forgive. I was thinking about that. I think the last thing I had to forgive was my landlord last year did something. Well, I had a sewer pipe leaking, and he wouldn't believe that it smelled bad or that it was making me sick, and took him a while to fix it. So I had to forgive him, which took me a little while. But I got there. I really did. And I was thinking about why. And I think in part because I can feel the block in my heart when I'm not forgiving something. You can tuck it away and think it's not there, but it's there. So tell me why you forgive. Let me hear from you. It hurts too much not to. Yes, Michael. To be free. To heal. To heal. Yes, Molly. Mm-hmm. It's all good. Yeah, in the biggest picture. Yeah, it's already, the forgiving is already given. So, yeah. Thank you, Molly. Patty. Oh, because I love myself too much to carry the burden. I want to make sure the people on Zoom are hearing these beautiful answers. Yes, I love that. That's advanced forgiving. Kathy Mary. So you can be with certain people again. Yes. Right. Yeah, I hear you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So you can be with people again. Oh, that's love, Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, Melinda. I'm sorry. Lack forgiveness. Oh, that's beautiful. Lack of forgiveness takes too much time and energy from who I am. For you guys unnamed, Ocean. It feels like a blessing, a sacrament to forgive. Beautiful. Yes. 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 Forgiveness allows me to feel compassion for myself and for others, which is a really beautiful expression of love. Yes. Beautiful. Yes, Diana. To let go of someone with love and with freedom. Yes, absolutely. Beautiful answers. Wow, it's a beautiful reflection. Thank you so much for sharing that. It makes me think of the poem from Hafiz. I know I read it before, but I love this is my favorite Hafiz poem. He wrote, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. I find that to be similar to the quote in Matthew, be children of God who make the sun rise on the evil and the good and sends rain to the righteous and the unrighteous. It's just unconditional love. Yeah. So, the term divine love, when you contemplate, what is that? That can sound vague, hard. Someone asked me what that was. And I was thinking about that this week. I feel like it's an ever-expanding, inclusive love. Mary, in this, oh gosh, could you hand me that book? I just want to show them. I've been loving this. Mary Magdalene Revealed, Megan Watterson. Highly recommend that one. Yeah. So in the book she writes about how we need to embrace part of darkness is our limited, very selective love, and so we need to move towards more inclusion, right? I think we're having birthing pains of that in our society. It seems like we move towards more inclusion, and then there's this contraction, expansion and contraction, right? It's like birthing. But she wrote, if I could start over from the beginning, I would start with the most invisible, the threads in the web of our ecosystem that are rarely named, much less revered. I would start by listing the names of the trees, the flowers, the seeds that carry the light that give us life, because this is what we have forgotten. She's talking about forgotten to love. I would start with the names of everyone we've excluded, of the street children, of the millions slowly starving to death in plain sight. I would start with the outsiders, the outcasts. I would start with every one of us who thinks we aren't worthy of love just as we are. That's really beautiful. So, and she talks about, especially how Christianity would be if it didn't exclude the divine feminine voice. And what's great is all these women, Episcopal priests, and all these present-day mystics are bringing in that voice. So I highly recommend exploring the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. There's a lot to it. I could really do a 6 months on it. But I think this is what true resurrection, in this Holy Week, it culminates with resurrection. But I think a true and living resurrection is about our everyday choices. It's about our everyday willingness to stretch our heart back open to that person we might feel slighted us, right? It's about stretching our heart open to that unhoused person in the park that we might close down to, or to open our heart to every living creature, every blossoming flower, right? And every place where mercy, not judgment, is needed, right? That's resurrection. So, in closing, may we be resurrected out of the old ways of suffering due to ignorance. we've come a long way. We've got a ways to go, but we can do this. And let love guide our way. Let love guide our way of living. So I say glory, hallelujah. We're going to sing glory, hallelujah next Sunday in our choir. I say glory, hallelujah to the love that is growing in each one of you. I celebrate that. I recognize that. And the love that is growing here and the love that is growing within each one of us. May all beings be at peace and live in love. Thank you all. Om Shanti.